It was a day just like any other, really. Just a normal day in my life, until it wasn't. Meet me, a regular Joe. Nothing special, just your everyday guy. I work a 9 to 5 at an office downtown pushing papers, keeping my head down. I live alone in a small apartment, 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a bathroom. My routine is as predictable as the sunrise. I wake up, make coffee, take a shower, go to work, come home, watch TV, and go to bed. Rinse and repeat. But that day, the day it all started, was different. I woke up feeling off. There was this gnawing unease, a sense that something was wrong. But I brushed it off, blamed it on the lack of sleep or the stale coffee. I went about my day, but that feeling, it just wouldn't shake off. It was like a cloud hanging over me, a shadow lurking in the corner of my eye. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the spreadsheets and the memos, but as the day wore on, the unease grew. It was a whisper in the back of my mind, a prickling sensation on my skin. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't pinpoint what was causing it. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see something, but there was nothing. Just the same old office, the same old cubicles, the same old colleagues. When I got home, I hoped that the feeling would dissipate. But it didn't. It clung to me, like a cold draft in a closed room. I tried to shake it off, tried to distract myself with TV shows and takeout, but it was there, that creeping sense of dread, that unshakable feeling that something was off. It was like my gut knew something my mind didn't. I went to bed that night, hoping that sleep would wash away the unease. I hoped that I would wake up the next day and everything would be back to normal. Little did I know my life was about to take a turn for the worse. I came home that day to an unwelcome surprise. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was off. It was like walking into a room where the air is too thick, too heavy. You know that something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it. The first thing I noticed was the mess. Stuff was scattered everywhere, papers strewn across the floor, the couch cushions chucked aside, books toppled from the shelves. It was as if a tornado had swept through my living room. But here's the weird part, nothing was missing. Not a single thing. My TV was still there. My laptop. Even the loose change I'd left on the coffee table. The fear crept in slowly. At first I thought I'd been robbed, but the fact that nothing was taken just didn't add up. I felt this chill run down my spine, like ice-cold fingers tracing my back. It was a feeling that I wasn't alone, that someone, or something, was watching me. I called out, hoping against hope that maybe a friend had stopped by and messed around, but the only response was the echo of my own voice bouncing off the walls. The silence was deafening. It was the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring, the kind that makes you hyper-aware of every little sound. I walked around the house, my heart pounding in my chest, every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside sent jitters down my spine. I checked every room, every closet, every nook and cranny, but I was alone, yet that feeling of being watched never left me. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was very wrong. I decided to investigate, and what I found chilled me to the bone. I knew something was off about my place, but I couldn't put my finger on it. There were these little signs, you know? Like the dishes in the sink seemed to multiply when I wasn't looking. The cushions on the couch would be slightly askew when I came back from work, like someone had been sitting there. It was the food that really got me thinking. The terror wasn't over, it was just beginning. I thought I'd seen the worst of it, but the strange happenings in my home continued, each incident more bizarre than the last. In the quiet of the day, I'd hear the whispers of a crowd, their voices hushed and indistinct. I'd turn around expecting to see a room full of people, but I was always alone. Then there were the noises at night. The silence would be broken by the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. Or the soft, persistent tapping, like someone wrapping their fingers against a hard surface. It was always the same rhythm. Tap, tap, pause. Tap, tap, tap. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my chest. The objects in my house seemed to move on their own. I'd leave a room only to return and find everything out of place. Once I found my TV remote in the fridge, another time all the pictures on my wall were turned upside down. It was like living in a fun house where nothing stayed where it should. And then there was the feeling of being watched. It was constant, unyielding. Every hair on my body stood on end, my skin prickling with unease. I could feel eyes on me, following my every move. I'd spin around, expecting to catch someone in the act, but there was never anyone there. The fear was oppressive, wrapping around me like a shroud. I was constantly on edge, my nerves frayed to the point of breaking. I would jump at the slightest noise, my heart hammering in my chest. I was scared to close my eyes, scared of what might happen in the dark. My home, once a place of comfort and sanctuary, had become a house of horrors. I felt trapped, a prisoner in my own house. The fear was constant, the terror unending. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows, waiting. My home, once my sanctuary, had become my prison. It was time to face my fear, whatever it was. No more running, no more hiding. The unknown had stalked my every move, seeping into the normalcy of my life, turning it into a living nightmare. It was time to confront it, to confront my terror. I'd made a decision. It wasn't a brave decision, more like a desperate one. I was tired of living in fear, tired of feeling like a stranger in my own home. So I decided that night I would face whatever was haunting me. I would face it and I would banish it once and for all. The night was as dark as my thoughts, the air as heavy as my heartbeat. I waited, the silence of the house mocking me, the darkness taunting me. Then it began. The familiar bone-chilling sensation of being watched, the feeling of dread creeping up my spine, the sounds that had no source, the shadows that had no form. I stood my ground. I refused to let it control me any longer. I shouted into the darkness, my voice echoing around the empty house. I demanded it to show itself, to confront me, and then it did. I won't go into detail about what I saw, what I experienced. Some things are better left unsaid, some horrors are better left in the shadows. But I will tell you this, it was terrifying, more terrifying than anything I could have ever imagined. I survived the encounter, but it changed me. It left a mark on me, a mark that time won't erase. I'm not the same person I was before the haunting. I'm not sure I'll ever be that person again. In the end, the real horror wasn't what was hiding in my house, it was the fear and paranoia it instilled in me. That's a terror that doesn't leave when the lights come on. Fear, after all, is the most potent form of horror. It lingers, it haunts, it's a ghost that never really leaves. It's the shadow that follows you, no matter how bright the light.